Okie doke. So as I mentioned, today's lesson is lesson 12. We're working with camera raw. For those of you who own a digital camera or at some point in the future get access to a digital camera, the better ones have a file format called camera raw. Camera raw is, for those of you who don't know this, is a digital negative. If you've worked at any time with traditional film and you've developed it and you have that strip when you're all done of negative, that is your negative film that you can hold in your hand. However, when we're working with digital cameras that are able to save in a camera raw file format, that becomes your negative. And it's something that you can do a fair amount of editing in camera raw. You can save it as a camera raw file. You can organize it. There's a lot of metadata that's available to you when you save your camera raw files. And that's what we wanted to start covering today, to show you what you can do in camera raw. And it's pretty powerful. We're really just, I don't use it that much, but I do know that for photographers who work extensively in the digital format, work with camera raw quite a bit. In fact, there are entire textbooks on camera raw itself. So there could be a whole separate class on camera raw if you really wanted that. I'm sorry, but I have no interest in doing that right now. But that's something that you might look into. So for example, if you go to lynda.com and you have access to that, you would be able to look at some of their courses on camera raw. There's also some textbooks that are available on Amazon.com that cover this subject very thoroughly. So I'm going to switch again. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And where do I want to go? I'm going to go to, I think I want, oh shoot, I may have goofed. I'm going to go here for a minute. So again, I don't want, this is my dog Bagel. I don't want just this Photoshop here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a new share. And I want the entire desktop to be shared. So this is what I was working with earlier. Okay, there's Bagel. She's a sweetheart. Anyway. Let's go ahead and I'm going to bring up Bridge. So for those of you who don't know how to get to Bridge, when you're in Photoshop, you go to File, Browse and Bridge. And that's what we're going to do. And I've already done that. And I've gone to our lesson 12 folder. There are a couple of different ways that you can view files in Bridge. I'm using, let me move this down a little bit so I can see. I'm using the film strip mode. Essentials is what you see by default, and I don't like that well. I like seeing the images at the bottom because then when I switch from images to, I got more panels. Damn, there's all these panels up there. To film strip mode, it places them at the bottom, and then when I click on one, you'll notice that I can see it enlarged on my screen, and I really like that. And you can see that if I click on this one, that this is the finished file and it's a PSD or Photoshop document. But if we look at the original, it's a CRW file. And if you're wondering what that is, that's a camera raw file, but it is specific to a Canon camera. That's what CRW is. Now, if we look at the woman here, we look at, there's the end file, which is a Photoshop file. We won't finish her today, but we'll get her started. If we look at the start file, it's an NEF file, or NET, NEF, I can't tell, I don't care. But anyway, that's a Nikon digital file format. And once you have opened it in Camera Raw, you can save it as a generic or Photoshop generic raw file format. So that would be your choice. To leave it as a CRW or whatever native camera raw file format that you have, or save it as a Photoshop raw file format. Now, if you want to open any of these files, let's open this start file here. If you double click on it, because it is a camera raw file, it will automatically open it in camera raw. Or rather, because it is a raw file format, it will automatically open it in camera raw. If you want to open a Photoshop file in camera raw, you cannot. If you want to open the only other a TIFF file in camera raw, you cannot. However, you'll notice that down here that we have a JPEG. You can open JPEGs in camera raw. And I believe the reason for that is that some digital cameras do not offer a raw file format. They only save as JPEGs, the files in JPEGs. Some of the better cameras can save both JPEG and raw file format at the very same time. So you have both to work with. But if you want to open a JPEG in camera raw, you have to go through the bridge and you control click on it. It brings up a menu, and you'll notice at the very top here, third one down, open in camera raw. That will allow you to do that. Okay, and then you can save it as a camera raw file format when you're done. Now, a couple of other things that I want to talk about here in Bridge that I find pretty amazing myself is that if you look over to the left, there is a whole bunch of stuff that you have available to you in terms of filters, and if you want to create collections, if you want to export the file. But more importantly, what I want you to see is the metadata. So if I come up here to the top and I click on metadata for each of these files, if I click especially on this CRW file, and I come down here to the film properties, you'll notice that it gives us the file name, it tells us the document type, which is a camera raw image. It gives us the date that it was created, the date it was modified, the file size, its dimensions, everything that you could possibly imagine. Now, in addition to that, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other metadata that's already built into this digital negative. What I like is the EXIF information down here. This tells us here the focal length of the lens. It tells us the lens itself. This was taken with a zoom lens, 18, or actually it's but it's kind of a wide angle lens. It goes from 18 to 55 millimeters, and it was taken at 37 millimeters. It tells us the f-stop. It tells us even that the flash didn't fire. It tells us what camera that it was used. It's a Canon EOS digital. It gives us the body serial number of the camera that's stamped into this. And it tells us the lens specifications. Now, sometimes, and this is, for example, if we were to open an image, a JPEG, for example, that was taken with an iPhone or any other smartphone, it will give you the latitude and longitude. And if you happen to be in an airplane or in a hang glider or something, it will also give you the altitude of that. Pretty amazing, all of the information that is stored in some of these. Okay, so that's all of that. And you'll notice that this camera raw, based on the last one that I opened up, I've already made some changes to this. So that's telling us in camera raw what changes that I made in my Monday class. So there you have that. Now we're ready to open this, and we're going to go ahead and make some changes to this. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on, let's go back to film strip mode just to show you here. And I'm going to go ahead and double click on it. and it should open. There we go, in Camera Raw. So you'll notice that here's over to the left is a thumbnail of this image. And again, I got to move some things around so I can see all of you here. Over to the right. Oh, I didn't want to zoom in. I'm trying to move stuff around here. Okay, let's look at the top first. We have some similar tools that you've seen before. Here's the magnification tool, the hand tool, if we have, zoomed in and we want to move around. We have the eyedropper tool. We have the crop. You can crop from here, and you can change a variety of things in here. Many of the same tools that you would see in Photoshop. But when you save this, again, as I did from the last time, we already have some settings that have been modified. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change all of these back to 0, because these go back to, we modified these on my Monday, Wednesday class. So I'm just going to set these back to 0, and we'll go back in here. And pardon me for not following the book to a T. I'm trying to do this from memory. And to be perfectly honest, I don't remember all of their settings. And when you're done with this class and you're working with your own images, you're going to be working intuitively anyway. You're not going to have a textbook to tell you exactly what to work with. Now, if I go back here and I say that I want to go back as shot, you can see that this image was fairly dark, but there's a lot of information built into this image that you just don't see. And that's what all of these tools are about. These are your basic tools. But you'll notice that under different tabs up here, we have the tone curve. We have here the detail panel. We have the hue saturation panel. We have up here split toning if you want to do that. We have effects if you wanted. We have up here calibration. We have all kinds of stuff up here, presets that you can load, and on and on and on. It's a pretty robust program. Today we're mostly just going to focus on some of the basic settings. So one of the things that we might do to start with is say, okay, this is taken on a cloudy day. This is what the white balance looks like as it was shot. Well, let's make some basic changes to that. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select cloudy day. That already now brightens up the mission a little bit, makes the Adobe here a little bit pinker, which is really kind of nice. We can also adjust the exposure. You can do that by hand, or we can use the eyedropper tool up here. And I can pick a white. Notice that changes it just a little bit, changes the tint, so that now we're kind of at a -15 in terms of the tint. And again, the temperature of the light remains about the same, about 7,600. Now what I can do is I can come back in here and let's say I feel that it's still a little bit too dark. So if I want, I can slide it down and make it darker if you feel that it's been overexposed. But I instead want it a little bit lighter here. So let's take this to maybe 0.15, brighten it up just a little bit. We could also add a little bit of contrast to that, maybe 10, 8. So that increases the contrast between the lights and the darks. If I want, you'll notice that the shrubbery in the foreground and also, the trees, the palm tree and the tree in the background, you don't see much detail. Most of it is in shadow. So what we can do is if you want to see less shadow, you can darken it. If I want to increase the detail inside those areas of shadow, I can do that. And notice it leaves just about everything else untouched. So we're going to boost that a little bit. We can boost the whites a little bit if you want, make them a little bit brighter. You can boost or, darken the blacks. We can fix texture. We're going to add a little bit of clarity to this, maybe 3 or 4. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit of vibrance and a little bit of saturation. Okay. And when I'm done with that, now I have a couple of options available to me. I can just select done. That saves the settings to the digital negative. I can open the image, and when I click open, which I will in a couple of minutes, that will open it to Photoshop. And then if I click save image, it gives me a whole slew of options here. So this is really where it's set up for the person who works extensively with raw file formats. If I want, I can save it to the same destination, or as I'm modifying my images, I can save to a separate folder. So that's what this folder is about. Then I can consider how I'm naming the file. I can use the document name, but then in addition to that, so right now it's showing me an example of how this is going to be saved. It's 12astart.dng. The DNG is the digital negative. That's the Photoshop digital negative extension that I was talking about. In addition to that, so that's what the file extension is down here. But in addition to that, if I want, I can come up here and I can say, you know what, I want to use a 3-digit serial number because I've taken hundreds of images that day, and I want to know in sequential order what these images are. In addition to that, maybe I want a date stamp in here. And there's different ways that you can determine, what format you want your date to be. You want it to be the year, month, and day. That's your date. Or if you, down here, if you want the, whatever works for you. Okay, so I'm going to use that one. And again, it shows me up here what it's going to look like. Okay, and that leaves a fairly extensive, series of numbers up here, because you can see that the date is 2020, and it's 04, which is April, and 09, which is today's date. Okay. Then you have some other options down here that I rarely use, but if you want compatibility with older versions of Camera Raw, if you want a preview, medium size and JPEG, you can do that. You can embed fast load data, which I don't even know what the heck that is. Use lossy compression. That's important if you wish, especially for JPEGs. And you can also embed the original raw file in there. So that gives you options for saving. Okay. Now, if I want, I can open this. So let's go ahead and open it in Photoshop. Hopefully all of you see that. Now I can continue to work on it, make additional changes using all of my filters, all of my adjustment layers, many of which were, as I showed you, were already available in Camera Raw, and you're set to go. So I'm going to go back again, but this time we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to look inside this folder here where they have 3 additional images of missions. And the example that they're trying to demonstrate here is that, for example, that if you've taken a number of photographs, interior or external, on the same day, and you want to make sure that the coloration and all the properties of those images are compatible with one another, then we can open them in Camera Raw at the same time. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that all 3 are selected, and I'm going to double click. And you'll notice that it opens all 3 in Camera Raw. Now, you'll notice that I can click on them separately, and I can edit them separately, or I can edit them all at the same time. And I can use one of the images as a key image. let's say I want to use this one as a key image, and you'll notice that all of the, it's already using the settings that I just used for this particular image. If I hold down the Shift key, notice that these are selected as well. Now, as I change one of, if I go back and I change one of these images, if I go back and I say, I want this to go back as shot, notice how it darkens a little bit, but at the same time, these other images were darkened as well. Let me do something really extreme. Let's change the contrast of this and bleach all of this out. Notice that the other two images are changing at the same time. This particular feature here is used extensively for catalogs and books. Catalogs in particular, if you've noticed, for clothing or fashion, catalogs where a model could be shot on the same date in, especially outdoors, where you have very little control over the lighting. What you can do is that make sure that color of fabric, and especially the skin tones of the models, remains consistent. And so this is the feature that you would use to do that. Okay? Are we good? Yes, no? Could I get a show of hands, a yay and nay? Everything is cool? Everybody there? Everybody watching TV or something? No? Okay. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to deal with the model, and we're going to deal with interior lighting for her. So I got to flip forward in the book a little bit, remember what I have to do with her. And we're going to adjust the white balance. So we're not going to complete her today. We can complete her on a separate day. So I'm going to go ahead and just cancel. I'm going to go back again to bridge, and I'm going to go outside of this, look inside lesson 12, and I'm going to select, here's the start file. Notice that there's considerable changes that have been made to her. That there's quite a bit of red in there. There's some birthmarks and stuff that they want to remove, and change a few other features in here as well. So I'm just going to get you started with this, and then we'll call it a day here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this start image. It brings it up in Camera Raw. So what I want to do here is we're going to adjust the white balance first. And there's a variety of ways that we can do that. Notice that the white balance right now is set to custom. Let me go back to as shot. And it has sort of a greenish cast to it. I'm also going to go back, and because I did this the other day, I'm going to reset all of these settings here. Clarity, there we go. So this is how it was originally shot, and it looks nice, but there is a greenish cast to this. So one of the things that we can do is that I can come up here, and this controls, this little eyedropper controls the white balance. So if I pick the whitest white in her dress, notice that it takes some of that green out of there, and it makes it much more pink. Okay, so that's a good start. The next thing that we can do now is we can adjust the exposure of it. And following the textbook, I'm just going to go to 0.3. So it's a little bit brighter. How much? You know, typically you just slide it to the right and we come back, or you slide it to the left and you come back until you hit sort of a happy medium. And, you know, whatever you think works best for you. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to increase contrast a little bit. I like a lot of contrast in my photographs. So this is going to be plus 15. Let's go back here. There we go. So we have good contrast between lights and darks. And then we're going to increase the clarity to 8. It's kind of the sharpness of it all. Okay. So we're doing pretty good with her. The next thing that we can do is we can adjust levels. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this and we're going to open it as a smart object in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and open the image. It opens it directly in Photoshop because we're going to make changes to this that we may want to change later. The book doesn't tell you to do this, but again, I think it's always a good practice is to Command J, make a copy of the layer, or yeah. Now we can come back and we can edit and make changes to this. So the next thing that we're going to do in here is we're going to go to adjustments and we're going to start with levels. Now, how I work with levels is I always start, and I'm moving some things around here, is I always start with auto just to see what it does. And it makes a slight change to her. Okay, so what I can do with that, excuse me, is you'll notice that if I want, I can pull the highlights down here just a little bit. And at the very end here, I can pull in the darks, just a tad. Okay, so I have nice adjustments here going. That's just levels. The next thing that we're going to do, and here I believe, there we go. They want us to change the midtones too. So I'm going to go to, instead of 1.0, we're going to drop it down to 0.9. 0.9. Okay, so we're darkening the background, but we're leaving the bulk of her alone. Okay. Now, if we want, we can go back to Camera Raw and edit this. What I've forgotten to do, though, is I need to take her and I need to select her and I need to go to Layer. Told you I forget something here. And I want to go to Smart Objects and I want to convert her to a smart object here. There we go. So whatever changes that we make to her, especially with filters, we can edit later on and go back and make some changes here. So if I come back here and I double click on this layer, let's go back here. It should take us, it says after editing the contents, choose file, save. I got to commit first, my mistake. So I'm going to go back here. So if I go back here, they should be reflected in Camera Raw. Okay. Now, if we want, we can go back to Camera Raw. So let's go back to Camera Raw. And let's edit her. Here's our start. Notice it has made some changes in her. One of the things that we might want to do is to go to color in here. And let's go ahead and reduce the reds a little bit. And I already did that the other day. We're going to go to -2 here. And the oranges, -10. Oranges, yeah, I already did that. And the yellow, magentas, -3. So I already did that from the other day. So let's go back to the image again. It will make some minor changes there. And then the last thing that I want to do today, which is something that we've already done many, many times, is we're going to make alter her image a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to use the spot healing brush to make changes. I'll hit Command plus, zoom in, or just on my touchpad here, I can just pinch my fingers in and out. And one of the first things that we'll do is we're going to get rid of a little nose thing there. We're going to come over here and we're going to get rid of that little blemish, if you want to call it that. Maybe up here, a few more. Oh, it's gone. Got it all cleaned up. My recommendation to you, though, is to focus mostly on the face if you're going to make changes. Don't get rid of all of the marks. It will look very, very unnatural. She'll look more like a corpse than a real person. So just maybe a couple that you think improve her appearance. One of the next things that we'll do next week will be to use the dodge and sponge tools to increase the whiteness of her eyes and increase the blue of her pupils, or no, iris, and the whites of her eyes will be a little bit wider. And then we'll make some other changes, fuzziness and adjusting her skin tones a little bit. But that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. So that's taken us into almost 45 minutes into the class. I'm going to switch out of this and stop sharing, unless, before I do so, if there are any questions, let me know if you have some questions. And I'll go ahead and I'll stop. Once I stop sharing, I'm going to also stop recording this time. No questions? Can put that in the chat, or if I stop sharing now, just raise your hand if you'd like to speak. So